Emma stood by the large bay window of their modern penthouse apartment, gently resting a hand on her growing belly. At 8 months pregnant, she could feel the baby's movements more clearly now, a constant reminder of the new life she was bringing into the world. The soft golden light of the late afternoon filtered through the glass, casting a warm glow over the sleek furnishings. To any outsider, Emma and David seemed to live a perfect life. He was a highly successful businessman, the CEO of a rapidly growing tech company, and she was the devoted wife eagerly awaiting motherhood. Their social media portrayed a blissful couple, attending gala events, hosting elegant dinners, and sharing smiles that seemed genuine. But beneath this carefully crafted facade, the truth was far more complicated. Emma had sensed for months a growing distance between her and David, a quiet tension that neither of them addressed openly. She brushed off her suspicions initially, convincing herself that the stress of her pregnancy and David's demanding work schedule were to blame. Yet, the uneasy feeling in her gut refused to dissipate. David was the embodiment of success and charm. Tall and impeccably dressed, he carried himself with the confidence of a man who had it all. But Emma knew the cost of that success: long hours at the office, late-night meetings, and a phone that seemed permanently attached to his hand. She remembered the early days of their marriage, when they would talk for hours about their dreams and plans. Now, those conversations had dwindled to brief exchanges over breakfast or hurried goodnights. Despite the strain, Emma held on to hope. She was determined to give their child a stable and loving family, and she believed David still cared deeply for her. But recently, she had noticed subtle changes: missed calls she didn't answer, secretive texts, and a nervousness in David's demeanor that made her heart ache with suspicion. Unbeknownst to Emma, David's life was on the brink of unraveling. He had been involved in an affair for several months, a dangerous liaison with Sophie, a woman who was as ambitious as she was cunning. Sophie worked as an executive assistant at one of David's company's biggest clients, and she quickly recognized the power that came with being close to him. Unlike Emma, who embodied warmth and family, Sophie was calculating and hungry for control. She had made it clear from the start that she wanted more than just a fleeting romance. She aimed to be a permanent fixture in David's life, in every way possible. Their secret meetings had become more frequent and intense, with Sophie pushing David to make bigger commitments, while he wrestled with guilt and temptation. Emma's world was about to collide with this hidden reality. The sense of trust she had painstakingly built over years was on the edge of shattering, replaced by the bitter taste of betrayal. The apartment that once felt like a sanctuary now seemed cold and unfamiliar, echoing with secrets and lies. Suspense hung thick in the air, as Emma sensed that everything she believed in was fragile and precarious. Little did she know that the moment when her life would change forever was closer than she could imagine, an unexpected discovery that would force her to confront the deepest wounds of betrayal and make a decision that would alter the course of their lives forever. One evening, Emma had decided to take a short walk around the block to clear her mind. The weight of the pregnancy and the growing distance between her and David had been suffocating. She needed fresh air, a moment away from the silence that had settled like a thick fog in their once lively home. As she wandered near a small, upscale restaurant tucked away on a quiet street, something caught her eye. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she saw David sitting at a secluded table with Sophie. They looked closer than ever, whispering and laughing softly, their hands occasionally touching. At first, Emma thought it was a friendly meeting, but then the scene quickly changed. David reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, velvet box. Emma's heart stopped. She watched, frozen, as he opened it to reveal a sparkling ring, the symbol of a promise she never expected to witness. Sophie's eyes widened with shock and joy as she nodded silently, tears glistening in her eyes. The entire moment was intimate, private, something Emma was never meant to see. Shock crashed over her like a tidal wave. The betrayal was more than she could have imagined. Every beat of her heart thundered painfully in her chest as disbelief took root. How could David, the man she loved and trusted, be proposing to another woman while she carried their child? The surreal scene replayed in her mind, making her knees weak. She clutched her growing belly instinctively, as if trying to shield the innocent life within from the storm raging outside. Her mind raced, struggling to process the cruel reality. Was this some terrible mistake? Was it really happening right before her eyes? She felt utterly exposed and vulnerable, the emotional pain sharp enough to cut through the physical discomforts of pregnancy. The man who had promised to protect and cherish her was making a lifelong commitment to someone else. The image of David smiling tenderly at Sophie as she accepted the ring haunted her, tearing apart the last threads of trust she had left. Her thoughts spiraled into a whirlwind of fear and uncertainty. She worried about what this meant for her future and, most importantly, for the baby growing inside her. Would she be able to provide a stable home alone? Could she raise a child without the father she had once dreamed of sharing this journey with? The weight of responsibility pressed down on her shoulders, heavier than ever before. Despite the hurt, Emma felt a fierce protectiveness stir within her, a determination to fight for her child's future no matter the cost. Yet, in that moment, the pain was overwhelming. She battled tears, panic, and heartbreak all at once, feeling isolated in a world that suddenly seemed cold and unfamiliar. After several agonizing minutes of silent observation, Emma made a quiet decision. She would not confront David immediately. The last thing she wanted was to give him the satisfaction of seeing her broken or to risk a confrontation that could spiral out of control, especially with the baby's health at stake. Instead, she retreated quietly into the night, her mind already working through the next steps. How could she protect herself and her unborn child? What could she do to ensure justice and security? Though shaken to her core, Emma's resolve began to harden. She knew she had to play this carefully and strategically. The moment she saw David's betrayal was also the moment she began plotting her path forward, a path where she would reclaim control over her life and protect everything she held dear. Emma and David's story had begun like a fairy tale. They met during their final year at university, where David's charm and ambition had instantly drawn Emma in. He was confident, articulate, and driven, qualities that promised a bright future. Emma, with her warm smile and gentle nature, had been captivated by his vision and passion. Their courtship was filled with shared dreams and laughter, and it wasn't long before they married, full of hope and excitement for the life they would build together. Emma had always envisioned a family rooted in love and trust, where they would support one another through every challenge. She imagined late-night talks after their children were asleep in a partnership that balanced work and home life seamlessly. Those early days were filled with joy and promise, and she gave herself wholly to their union, believing in the strength of their bond. As time went on, however, the pressures of David's career began to pull them apart. His business flourished rapidly, demanding more of his time and energy than Emma had anticipated. Late nights at the office turned into weekends filled with meetings and business dinners, and the man she once knew started to feel like a stranger. Emma tried to adapt, making sacrifices to accommodate his hectic schedule, often putting her own needs aside. She took on the household responsibilities with grace, supporting David's ambitions while quietly hoping he would notice the toll it took on her. Pregnancy brought a new wave of challenges, both physical and emotional, and Emma yearned for reassurance that their relationship could weather this storm. Yet, David's growing distance left her feeling alone and questioning the future they had once dreamed of together. Sophie entered their lives at a time when Emma's suspicions were beginning to surface, but she was still holding on to hope. Sophie was smart, beautiful, and ambitious, a woman who quickly identified David's vulnerabilities and his craving for admiration outside of their marriage. They met at a corporate event hosted by one of David's key clients, where Sophie worked as an executive assistant. Her charm was effortless, and she knew exactly how to flatter and engage David, making him feel important in ways Emma no longer did. Sophie's ambitions were clear. She wanted to rise above her role and saw David as her ticket to a more powerful life. She was not just a mistress but a calculated player who sought control and influence. Their relationship blossomed quietly, behind closed doors, fueled by shared secrets and Sophie's relentless pursuit of David's attention. Emma's initial reaction to the distance and odd behavior was denial. She couldn't believe that David, the man she loved and trusted, would betray her. She clung to memories of their early love and tried to convince herself that the strain was temporary, a result of stress and exhaustion. She reached out more, attempting to reconnect with David emotionally and physically, hoping to salvage their marriage before it was too late. When she noticed Sophie's name appearing more frequently on David's phone, she hesitated to ask, fearful of what she might discover. Emma's attempts to hold the family together were fueled by love and hope, even as cracks appeared beneath the surface. She wanted to believe in David's promises and in the life they had built, unwilling to face the painful truth that was slowly unraveling around her. Yet, deep inside, a growing unease whispered that something was very wrong, setting the stage for the devastating discovery that would change everything. The moment Emma made the decision to stop feeling like a helpless victim marked a turning point in her life. The pain of betrayal still burned deep within her, but she refused to let it define her or dictate the future for her and her unborn child. Instead of collapsing under the weight of heartbreak, Emma chose to rise with determination. She realized that the best way to protect herself and her baby was to take control of the situation, to use her intellect and resilience as weapons against the man who had so cruelly deceived her. The days following her discovery became a whirlwind of quiet, calculated action. She understood that rushing into confrontation would only risk further pain and chaos, so she focused on gathering information and building a solid foundation for what she knew had to come next. Emma started by diving deep into the world of David's business. Though she had always kept a respectful distance from his professional life, she now committed herself to learning everything she could about the company's financial health, legal standing, and operational structure. Nights were spent poring over public financial reports, stock information, and corporate filings, looking for weaknesses she could exploit if necessary. She contacted old acquaintances who had connections in the corporate world, discreetly asking questions about David's company without revealing her personal situation. Each piece of knowledge she uncovered added to her growing arsenal. She discovered accounts that only David and a handful of executives controlled, contracts that hinged on strict payment schedules, and financial liabilities that, if disrupted, could cripple the business. This was no longer just about personal revenge, it was about safeguarding her future in a very real, tangible way. Recognizing the importance of expert guidance, Emma arranged secret meetings with her trusted lawyer and a financial advisor who specialized in corporate law and business assets. These meetings were held in quiet cafes and discreet offices where Emma could speak freely without fear of being overheard. Her lawyer helped her understand the legal avenues available to freeze or restrict access to company accounts, even in the face of potential pushback from David and his inner circle. The financial advisor broke down the intricate details of the company's financial flows, advising Emma on how to navigate the complex mechanisms that kept the business afloat. These consultations not only equipped Emma with practical strategies but also gave her a newfound confidence. She was no longer the vulnerable wife betrayed by her husband, she was becoming a formidable force capable of making serious moves. Emotionally, Emma's transformation was profound. The hurt and betrayal that had once consumed her began to evolve into sharp clarity and purpose. She found herself thinking like a strategist rather than a victim. Where before she had felt powerless and lost, now she saw opportunities and control. It wasn't easy, the emotional roller coaster of processing the betrayal while carrying a child was exhausting. Some nights she cried quietly, overwhelmed by the weight of her circumstances and the physical demands of pregnancy. But even in those moments of vulnerability, her resolve remained unshaken. She reminded herself constantly that the baby deserved a future free from deceit and instability, and that thought fueled her every step. Emma's focus sharpened as she balanced the physical and emotional toll of pregnancy with the mental toughness required to carry out her plan. As the hours ticked closer to the pivotal day, Emma's mind was a blend of anxiety and determination. She rehearsed scenarios in her head, weighing the risks and possible outcomes. Every detail mattered, from the timing of the account freeze to ensuring that David would have no immediate way to reverse it. She prepared letters and legal documents, making sure everything was airtight. The transformation from a trusting wife to a tactical planner was complete. Emma was ready to make her move. Beneath the calm exterior she presented to the world, a storm was gathering, one that would change the course of her life and David's company forever. The next day promised not just confrontation, but a reckoning born from careful calculation and unwavering strength. Emma knew that once she pulled the trigger, there would be no turning back. At the break of dawn, Emma felt a strange mixture of nerves and calm as she finalized the last steps of her plan. For weeks, she had meticulously prepared every detail, and now the moment had come to act. With the support of her lawyer and financial advisor, she had submitted formal legal documents to the company's bank and relevant authorities, demanding an immediate freeze on all corporate accounts under David's control. The paperwork was precise, leveraging clauses that protected spouses in cases of suspected financial misconduct or marital disputes impacting business interests. Emma had ensured that the freeze was not only legal but airtight. David would have no easy way to reverse it without her consent or court intervention. It was a move designed to hit where it hurt most: his power, his reputation, and the company he had built his identity around. By mid-morning, chaos erupted across David's business empire. David arrived at his sleek office, expecting the usual routine of meetings and decision-making, only to be met with confusion and alarm from his team. The chief financial officer approached him with grim news. All company bank accounts had been frozen, transactions were halted, payroll was at risk, and suppliers were refusing to ship goods without payment guarantees. Calls flooded in from anxious clients and partners demanding explanations. News began to leak, and within hours, rumors of internal turmoil swept through the industry. The stock price, which had been steady, started to dip as investors grew uneasy. David was stunned. The legal freeze was a weapon he hadn't anticipated, a crippling blow to the business he had controlled so tightly for years. Panic set in as he realized that this wasn't just a temporary setback, it was a full-scale assault on his empire. Desperation took over. David frantically contacted his lawyers, demanding immediate action to lift the freeze, but legal hurdles and the thoroughness of Emma's preparation made quick solutions impossible. He tried to call Emma repeatedly, but she remained unreachable, her phone turned off by design. Meetings that had been scheduled for weeks were canceled or postponed as employees feared instability and uncertainty. The leadership team was divided. Some rallied behind David, confident he would regain control, while others whispered doubts about his capability and the company's future. Suppliers delayed shipments, fearing non-payment. Employees worried about their salaries and job security. The once thriving company was now teetering on the edge of chaos, all because of one bold, calculated move. Meanwhile, Emma carried herself with quiet confidence. Despite the turmoil she had unleashed, she remained composed and resolute. Friends and advisors marveled at her strength and clarity. Her pregnancy did not slow her down, instead, it seemed to fuel her determination to protect her and her child's future. While David was engulfed in frantic damage control, Emma was busy reinforcing her position legally, preparing for any counterattacks. To the outside world, she was the image of calm control, a stark contrast to the tempest unraveling in David's world. Emma's transformation was now fully visible, from the betrayed wife to a woman wielding power with precision and courage. The tables had turned, and the emotional balance between them shifted dramatically. The psychological impact on David was profound. He who had once dominated the household and boardroom was now faced with a force he could neither predict nor easily overcome. His confidence cracked under the pressure, replaced by anxiety and resentment. The knowledge that Emma had outmaneuvered him fueled feelings of humiliation and loss. No longer was he the undisputed leader. Emma had taken control not only of the company's finances but also of the narrative. The emotional power in their relationship had reversed. Where David had once held all the cards, Emma now dictated the terms of engagement. This shift was not just about money or business, it was about reclaiming dignity and respect. In this new dynamic, David was forced to confront his mistakes and the consequences of his actions, while Emma stood firm, ready to fight for her family's future on her own terms. The moment David realized what had happened, a storm of rage and desperation consumed him. He stormed into their apartment later that day, the usual calm and composed facade completely shattered. His eyes, once warm and inviting to Emma, now burned with anger and disbelief. Without waiting for a greeting or explanation, he demanded to know why she had taken such a drastic step. Emma met his furious gaze with quiet determination, refusing to back down. The air between them crackled with tension as years of unresolved emotions boiled to the surface. What began as a confrontation over frozen accounts quickly unraveled into an intense argument, exposing the raw wounds beneath their fractured marriage. David accused Emma of betrayal, calling her actions reckless and destructive. He claimed she had no right to interfere in his business, his empire, and his life. But beneath the anger lay deeper resentments that spilled out in heated words. Emma reminded him of his neglect during her pregnancy, his emotional absence, and his secret affair that had shattered her trust. Their voices rose and fell, each word cutting deeper, revealing truths neither had dared to face openly before. The confrontation wasn't just about money or control, it was about broken promises, lost love, and the crushing weight of deceit. Emma's pain was palpable, but so was her newfound strength. She was no longer the silent victim, she was a woman fighting for justice and respect. In the midst of the conflict, David tried to manipulate Emma, pleading and bargaining for her to undo the freeze. He promised to end the affair, to make amends, and to rebuild their family. But Emma saw through the desperation in his voice. She knew that words alone were not enough, she needed tangible proof and a guarantee that he would change. David's pleas only reinforced her resolve to hold firm, knowing that any leniency now could mean more heartbreak later. She remained steadfast, making it clear that the freeze would only be lifted when he took full responsibility for his actions and committed to rebuilding trust genuinely. Meanwhile, Sophie's influence over David grew more urgent. She pressured him relentlessly, insisting he fix the business crisis quickly and quietly before the scandal ruined both their futures. Sophie was no longer content to be just a hidden figure, she wanted David to take decisive action that would protect their secret and her ambitions. Her demands added fuel to the fire, pushing David into reckless decisions as he sought ways to regain control. The pressure from Sophie and the mounting business fallout created a volatile mix of desperation and poor judgment. Determined to bypass Emma's blockade, David turned to legal loopholes and old allies within the company and the financial sector. He hired aggressive lawyers who began scrutinizing the freeze for technicalities and weaknesses. He called in favors from trusted executives to find backdoor channels for accessing funds and securing emergency credit lines. Some of these risky maneuvers skirted ethical boundaries, and David was willing to take the gamble, convinced that restoring his control quickly was worth the cost. These covert efforts created internal tension within the company, as not everyone was willing to support his tactics. Rumors of division and dissent spread, further destabilizing the already fragile business environment. Through all this chaos, Emma maintained her calm and unwavering stance. She anticipated David's moves and worked closely with her legal team to counter any attempts to undermine the freeze. Her focus never wavered from protecting her rights and securing a future for her child. Emma's strength became a beacon of resilience in a storm that threatened to consume them both. She refused to be intimidated or manipulated, standing firm in her belief that this confrontation was necessary for healing and justice. The balance of power between them had shifted decisively, and Emma was determined to see it through to the end, no matter how difficult the path ahead. Sophie's story was one of calculated ambition wrapped in charm and allure. Coming from a modest background, she had learned early on that power and influence were key to escaping limitations. Ambitious and cunning, Sophie was no stranger to manipulation when it came to getting what she wanted. Working as an executive assistant at a major client company, she quickly understood the dynamics of power within the business world and how to leverage her position. Her relationship with David began as a carefully cultivated connection, but it soon grew into something far more strategic. Sophie wasn't just interested in a fleeting romance, she envisioned herself as a queenmaker, someone who could reshape her life by aligning with a powerful man like David. Her personality combined a seductive charm with razor-sharp intelligence, making her a formidable presence behind the scenes. Sophie's ambitions extended far beyond personal gratification. She saw David's company as a golden opportunity, a chance to cement her influence not just over him but within the business world itself. If David lost control due to Emma's actions or any other crisis, Sophie was prepared to step in and fill the vacuum. She had quietly built alliances within the company's client network and was already positioning herself as indispensable to the company's future. Her plans involved not only securing David's loyalty but also carving out a leadership role for herself, potentially through partnership or even acquisition. Sophie envisioned steering the company in a direction that suited her vision, more aggressive, more ruthless, and ultimately more profitable. She saw the current turmoil as a stepping stone toward greater power, and nothing would stand in her way. Her manipulation tactics were subtle but effective. Sophie knew how to play on David's ego and insecurities, offering unwavering support when he felt overwhelmed, while gently steering his decisions to align with her goals. She used charm and emotional appeal to create dependence, making David believe that only she truly understood and supported him. At the same time, she was careful to keep her own ambitions hidden beneath layers of loyalty and affection. Sophie was skilled at exploiting weaknesses without appearing threatening, a master at controlling situations from the shadows. Her influence grew steadily as David leaned more on her for counsel and companionship, creating a dangerous dynamic that threatened to unravel everything Emma had fought to protect. Emma, observing from the sidelines, recognized the gravity of the threat Sophie posed, not just as a mistress but as a calculating power player. More than the betrayal of infidelity, Emma feared the deeper implications of Sophie's ambitions. She understood that Sophie was not simply a romantic rival but a potential business adversary who could destroy David's company and her own future security. Emma's worries extended beyond personal heartbreak to the very real possibility that Sophie's growing influence could permanently shift the balance of power in their lives. This realization steeled Emma's resolve to fight back not only for her marriage but to safeguard the company from falling into the wrong hands. Sophie represented a multifaceted threat, one that combined emotional manipulation with corporate strategy, and Emma knew that confronting Sophie would be as critical as confronting David himself. Throughout the turmoil unfolding in Emma's life, she was never truly alone. Though the betrayal cut deep, Emma was fortunate to have a close-knit circle of friends and family who stood by her unwaveringly. Her best friend, Claire, had been a constant source of emotional strength since their college days. Claire's presence was like a warm anchor, offering comfort during the darkest moments when Emma felt overwhelmed by heartbreak and uncertainty. Emma's sister, Rachel, also stepped in, providing practical help and words of encouragement that reminded Emma she wasn't facing this battle in isolation. Their regular visits, phone calls, and late-night conversations created a safety net that allowed Emma to share her fears without judgment, helping her to navigate the emotional strain of pregnancy coupled with betrayal. One particularly tender evening, Emma found herself exhausted and emotionally drained after a difficult doctor's appointment. Claire arrived with homemade soup and sat quietly by her side, simply holding her hand. The gesture, small but profound, reminded Emma of the strength found in companionship. Similarly, Rachel organized weekly gatherings, bringing together close friends to create an atmosphere of love and support. These moments became a lifeline for Emma, reminding her that even as her world felt like it was crumbling, there was still light and hope surrounding her. The emotional support from loved ones was invaluable, easing her isolation and helping her gather the courage needed to face each new day. Alongside the emotional anchors, Emma's legal and financial advisors played critical roles in reinforcing her position. Her lawyer, Samantha, was not only a trusted professional but a fierce advocate who guided Emma through the complex legal terrain with empathy and precision. Samantha's calm expertise gave Emma the confidence to take bold steps, reassuring her that the freeze on the company accounts was both lawful and strategic. Meanwhile, the financial advisor, Marcus, provided clear insights into the company's vulnerabilities and advised Emma on how to protect her interests effectively. Their collaborative approach ensured that Emma's decisions were grounded in solid legal and financial strategy, reducing the uncertainties that might have otherwise paralyzed her. As the days passed, Emma's confidence and resilience grew steadily. The combination of steadfast emotional support and expert guidance transformed her from a woman broken by betrayal into a determined fighter ready to reclaim control of her life. She began setting boundaries with David and Sophie, no longer allowing fear or doubt to dictate her actions. Each successful legal maneuver and every reassuring conversation with her support system strengthened her resolve. Emma found herself embracing a new identity, not just as a betrayed wife and expectant mother, but as a woman empowered by knowledge, community, and inner strength. This growing resilience was the foundation upon which she planned to build her future, ensuring that whatever lay ahead, she would face it with courage and clarity. The moment the company accounts were frozen, David's business began to unravel at an alarming rate. Deals that had been meticulously negotiated for months suddenly stalled, unable to move forward without access to funds. Key clients grew frustrated as payments were delayed, casting doubt on the company's reliability. The ripple effect was immediate. Suppliers halted shipments, contracts were put on hold, and cash flow problems quickly spiraled out of control. Employees, once confident in the company's direction, started murmuring anxiously about job security. The office atmosphere shifted from one of focused ambition to tense uncertainty. Morale plummeted as rumors spread, and internal conflicts flared among management teams struggling to navigate the sudden crisis. The foundation of David's empire, built on years of hard work and calculated risks, now felt dangerously unstable. As news of the financial freeze leaked beyond the walls of the company, David's reputation in the industry took a severe hit. Colleagues and competitors alike whispered about the turmoil behind the scenes, questioning his ability to lead under pressure. Industry insiders speculated on whether the scandal would have long-lasting effects on his credibility. Trade publications began publishing articles analyzing the situation, highlighting the cracks in what had seemed an untouchable business empire. Invitations to high-profile events dwindled, and alliances that had once seemed solid began to falter. For David, the damage was not just financial, it was deeply personal. His carefully curated image of strength and success was crumbling before his eyes, exposing vulnerabilities that had been hidden for far too long. Investor confidence, which had once been a pillar of David's success, started to waver significantly. Meetings with key shareholders became tense and unproductive, with pointed questions about the company's future dominating discussions. Some investors threatened to withdraw their support if stability was not restored quickly, while others called for drastic leadership changes. David found himself increasingly isolated as pressure mounted from all sides. The fear of losing control was no longer hypothetical, it was a looming reality. This growing distrust among investors made every decision more difficult, and the weight of potential failure pressed heavily on David's shoulders. The once smooth operations of the business were now hampered by doubt and uncertainty. Meanwhile, Emma continued to act with precision and care, making calculated public moves to protect herself and the baby's interests. Understanding the power of perception, she maintained a discreet yet firm presence in legal and corporate circles, carefully managing her public image. She refrained from airing personal grievances in public, instead letting her legal actions speak for themselves. Emma's measured approach garnered quiet respect from allies and advisors, portraying her as a determined and resilient figure rather than a vengeful wife. Through this strategy, she not only safeguarded her financial rights but also ensured that the narrative remained focused on justice and protection rather than scandal and drama. This careful balancing act helped her build a foundation of support that extended beyond her immediate circle. As the crisis deepened, David's personal and professional isolation became more pronounced. Friends who once rallied around him began to distance themselves, wary of being caught in the fallout. His attempts to reach out for help often met with cold shoulders or cautious advice. Within the company, loyalty was fractured, and whispers of leadership changes circulated in hushed conversations. The man who had once commanded respect and admiration now found himself battling a growing sense of loneliness and vulnerability. This isolation only fueled his frustration and desperation, making it harder for him to see a clear path forward. Meanwhile, Emma stood firm, her position strengthened by the very chaos that threatened to consume David. The turning point was clear, the power dynamic had shifted irrevocably, and David's downfall was no longer just a possibility, it had begun in earnest. In the quiet moments between the chaos, Emma found herself reflecting deeply on everything she had endured. The betrayal that had once shattered her world slowly transformed into a source of unexpected strength. She realized that the pain she felt was not a weakness but a catalyst for growth. Each challenge she faced, from discovering David's affair to navigating the freezing of company accounts, had shaped her into a woman who was no longer willing to be sidelined or silenced. Emma saw clearly now that her worth was not defined by her husband's actions or the fractures in their marriage but by her own courage and resilience. This journey from heartbreak to empowerment became a personal awakening, one that allowed her to reclaim her dignity and take ownership of her future. As Emma prepared for motherhood, she balanced the physical demands of pregnancy with a fierce determination to protect her family in every sense. The baby growing inside her became a symbol of hope and new beginnings, a reminder that life could flourish even in the midst of hardship. She attended prenatal appointments with renewed purpose, surrounded by supportive friends and family who uplifted her spirit. At the same time, Emma devoted herself to creating a stable foundation, not only emotionally but also financially and legally. She recognized that motherhood would require strength beyond the physical and that by asserting control over her circumstances, she was laying the groundwork for a secure and loving environment for her child. Emotional healing was neither quick nor linear, but Emma approached it with patience and resolve. There were moments of vulnerability when tears came unbidden, yet these were balanced by times of quiet reflection and growth. She sought solace in journaling, allowing her thoughts and feelings to flow freely, helping her process the complex emotions swirling within. Support from close friends and family provided a lifeline, reminding her that she was not alone. With every passing day, Emma's resolve to protect herself and her unborn child hardened. She set clear emotional boundaries with David, refusing to engage in destructive conflicts or manipulative tactics. These boundaries were not just about keeping David at arm's length but about safeguarding her peace and well-being. At the same time, Emma was mindful of the threat Sophie represented. She refused to allow Sophie's manipulations to derail her healing or undermine her authority. Emma made it clear, both privately and through legal channels, that she would not tolerate interference or attempts to disrupt her family's stability. This firm stance was empowering, signaling a new chapter where Emma was in control, not a passive participant in others' games. By setting these boundaries, Emma not only protected herself but also sent a powerful message to David and Sophie alike. The woman they underestimated was now a force to be reckoned with. This newfound strength was more than a reaction to betrayal. It was a declaration of Emma's identity and determination to forge a future defined by respect, love, and unwavering self-worth. The tension in the room was palpable as Emma, David, and Sophie finally faced each other in a sleek, glass-walled conference room overlooking the city skyline. It was a confrontation that had been building for weeks, a collision of emotions, secrets, and power struggles that none of them could avoid any longer. Emma stood tall and composed, her pregnancy evident but her demeanor unyielding. David's usual arrogance flickered with uncertainty, while Sophie's confident facade barely masked a flicker of nervousness. The air was thick with unspoken accusations, but it was Emma who broke the silence, her voice steady and resolute. "I'm done living in the shadow of lies," Emma began, locking eyes with both David and Sophie. "You both thought I would be silent, that I would accept betrayal and manipulation without consequence. But I won't. I'm reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my future. The company accounts remain frozen, and I have the legal backing to ensure that this fight isn't over." Her words cut through the room like a sharp blade, exposing the raw truth they had all tried to avoid. Emma's declaration was more than a statement of intent. It was a clear message that she was no longer the woman to be underestimated or controlled. David's face paled as the reality of his loss hit him in full force. The man who once wielded power effortlessly now grappled with the consequences of his choices. Love, trust, and control, the pillars of his life, had crumbled. He opened his mouth to speak but found his voice faltering. The facade of confidence was gone, replaced by a flicker of regret and desperation. For the first time, David saw clearly how far he had fallen from the man Emma once believed in. His attempts to manipulate and regain control were futile in the face of her unwavering resolve. The confrontation forced him to confront not only the collapse of his business but also the irreparable damage to his personal life. Sophie, sensing the tide turning against her, tried to maintain composure, but cracks appeared in her mask. Emma's legal team had uncovered evidence of Sophie's attempts to influence company decisions for personal gain, documents that painted her not just as a mistress but as a manipulative player jeopardizing the business's future. Faced with exposure, Sophie's defenses crumbled. The consequences she feared were now inevitable: loss of reputation, legal scrutiny, and the severing of her ties to David and the company. Her ambitions, once so carefully guarded, lay in ruins. The room seemed to shrink around her as the truth closed in, and for the first time, Sophie was rendered powerless. The emotional and verbal showdown laid bare years of deception, disappointment, and shattered dreams. Emma's courage illuminated the darkness, turning the confrontation into a pivotal moment of justice and clarity. She did not merely seek revenge, she sought to restore balance and protect what was hers and what she was about to bring into the world. This final encounter marked the end of an era defined by betrayal and the beginning of a new chapter rooted in empowerment and truth. As the confrontation ended, it was clear that the lives of all three would be forever changed, with Emma standing as the victor who refused to be broken. As the months passed, Emma prepared for the arrival of her baby with a renewed sense of hope and inner strength. The turmoil that had once consumed her life slowly gave way to moments of peace and anticipation for the future. Surrounded by her supportive friends and family, she attended prenatal classes, decorated the nursery with care, and embraced the quiet joys of impending motherhood. Each kick from her unborn child reminded her of the new beginning she was working toward, a life defined not by betrayal or pain, but by resilience, love, and possibility. Emma's focus shifted from the shadows of the past to the bright horizon ahead, determined to build a future on her own terms. David, meanwhile, faced the heavy consequences of his actions. The legal battles initiated by Emma's freeze on the company accounts escalated, bringing intense scrutiny from regulators and shareholders alike. His reputation in the business community suffered irrevocably, with some viewing his downfall as a cautionary tale of hubris and personal failings. While some speculated about the potential for redemption and personal growth, David's path remained uncertain. The isolation he had experienced only deepened, forcing him to confront the painful reality of losing not just his empire but also the trust and love he once took for granted. Whether he would rebuild himself or continue to spiral into obscurity was a question hanging in the air, but one thing was clear: the man who had once been untouchable was no longer invincible. Sophie's fate was sealed by the exposure of her manipulative tactics and the damage she inflicted on both David's life and the company. Ostracized by former allies and facing legal repercussions, she found herself isolated and stripped of the power she had so desperately sought. The glamorous image she had crafted was shattered, revealing a woman left to reckon with the consequences of her ambition and deceit. Sophie's downfall served as a stark reminder of the cost of manipulation and betrayal, and her story became a cautionary footnote in the saga that had upended lives and businesses alike. For Emma, the resolution of this painful chapter marked the start of something new and empowering. Freed from the shadows of her past, she began to envision a future where she could thrive independently. Plans took shape to launch her own venture, one that would not only provide financial security but also allow her to create a legacy grounded in integrity and strength. Whether it was a business focused on supporting other women facing challenges or a creative pursuit she had long set aside, Emma's vision was clear: to build a life defined by her values and resilience. This new beginning was not merely a fresh start but a declaration of self-worth and hope. Reflecting on the journey she had endured, Emma recognized the complex emotions woven through her story: betrayal, heartbreak, but also justice and empowerment. She understood that the pain had been a crucible, forging a stronger, wiser version of herself. The fight she waged was not only against the individuals who had wronged her but also against the fear and doubt that had threatened to consume her. In reclaiming control and standing firm, Emma found her true strength. Her story became one of triumph over adversity, a testament to the power of resilience and the possibility of renewal. As she prepared to welcome new life into the world, Emma knew that her future was hers to shape, and this time, she would do it on her own terms. 1 year later, Emma stood as a shining example of resilience and renewal. Motherhood had transformed her in ways she had never imagined. The sleepless nights and endless worries were now tempered by the pure joy of watching her child grow and thrive. Emma balanced the demands of parenthood with a flourishing professional life. Having launched her own business, a consultancy dedicated to empowering women facing personal and professional challenges, she quickly earned respect and admiration within her community. Her journey from betrayal to empowerment became a beacon of hope for many, inspiring others to reclaim their own lives. Emma's days were now filled with purpose, love, and a profound sense of peace that had once seemed unreachable. David's life had taken a markedly different trajectory. The fallout from the company's crisis and his personal choices continued to weigh heavily on him. Some of his attempts at redemption, public apologies, efforts to rebuild relationships, and quiet philanthropy showed glimpses of change, but they were often overshadowed by lingering consequences of his past mistakes. Financial struggles and strained personal connections persisted, serving as constant reminders of the cost of his actions. Whether he would ultimately find lasting redemption or continue to face downfall remained uncertain, but one thing was clear: the man who once commanded control had lost much of the power he once wielded. His story became a cautionary tale about trust, integrity, and the consequences of betrayal. For Emma, the year brought a new identity, one unshackled from the pain of her past. She no longer defined herself by the heartbreak or the battles she had fought, but by the strength and wisdom she had gained. Friends and family saw her as a pillar of courage and grace, a woman who had taken control of her narrative and shaped a life of meaning and joy. The scars of betrayal remained, but they served as reminders of how far she had come rather than wounds that held her back. Emma's peace was not just the absence of conflict but a profound acceptance of her journey and a hopeful embrace of the future. The final message of Emma's story is one of strength born from adversity and the power of reclaiming control over one's life. Her experience showed that even in the darkest moments, it is possible to rise, to rebuild, and to thrive. Emma's journey was a testament to resilience, reminding us all that betrayal and hardship do not have to define us. Instead, they can serve as catalysts for growth, courage, and transformation. As Emma looked forward to the years ahead, she did so with confidence, knowing that she had the strength to overcome whatever challenges might come, and that her life was truly her own to shape.